You know what's interesting? People admire intelligence. They measure it. They praise it. They treat it like a gift that should make life easier. But they rarely talk about the psychology that comes with it. Because having a very intelligent mind does not just change how well you solve problems, it changes how you experience reality. And for many highly intelligent people, that reality can feel strangely lonely. We are talking about people whose minds move faster than average. People who notice patterns quickly. People who ask deeper questions than the situation seems to require. People who often understand things early but still struggle to feel understood. From the outside, they can seem impressive, calm, capable, sharp. But internally, many of them are dealing with something much more complicated. Because intelligence is not only an advantage. Sometimes it is also a kind of psychological distance. Picture this. You are still young, maybe 10, maybe 12. The teacher explains something once, and you already get it. Not only that, you also notice the part that does not fully make sense. You hear contradictions in adults. You start asking questions that sound normal in your own head but make everyone else uncomfortable. At first, people call you smart, but after a while, that label starts to feel incomplete. Because being mentally ahead does not always mean being emotionally understood. You may do well in school and still feel disconnected. You may be praised for your mind and still feel strangely out of place. You may realize very early that understanding more does not automatically create belonging. And that is where the psychology begins. Highly intelligent people are often shaped by one repeated experience, being slightly out of sync with their environment. When your mind moves faster than the room, boredom appears early. When your thoughts are more abstract than the people around you can relate to, loneliness appears early too. And over time, that mismatch changes you. You become more private, more selective, more inward. Not because you dislike people, but because your inner world becomes easier to live in than many of your conversations. Psychologists sometimes describe this kind of experience through ideas like cognitive complexity, asynchronous development, and heightened mental intensity. But in simple terms, it means this. The mind is taking in more, connecting more, and processing more layers at once. And that sounds like a strength. Because it is. But it also has a cost. The cost is that rest becomes harder. A highly intelligent mind often does not just notice what is happening. It notices what could happen, what might happen, what should have happened, what someone probably meant, what they almost said, what the long-term consequence might be. So while other people move on, that mind keeps going. This is one reason highly intelligent people often overthink. They replay conversations. They analyze tone. They deconstruct behavior. They revisit choices long after the moment has passed. Not because they are weak, not because they are dramatic, but because when your brain naturally sees more variables, life rarely feels simple. A small decision can become 5 future scenarios. A short conversation can become a deeper analysis of motive, insecurity, and hidden tension. Even silence can become data. And when the mind never fully stops scanning for meaning, peace can feel harder to reach than people realize. That is another thing many people misunderstand. They assume intelligence creates confidence. Sometimes it does. But it can also create hesitation, because the more possibilities you see, the harder certainty becomes. The more angles you understand, the more difficult it is to feel fully settled inside one conclusion. So highly intelligent people can appear confident in thought, but uncertain in life. They can explain complex ideas clearly while quietly struggling with simple emotional questions like, where do I belong? Who truly understands me? Why does everything feel deeper than it seems to feel for everyone else? And this often shows up in relationships. Highly intelligent people are usually not satisfied by surface-level interaction for very long. They can do small talk, but many of them do not feel nourished by it. They often want depth, honesty, insight, nuance. They want to talk about what people really fear, what people really want, why people become who they become. So when they are surrounded by shallow conversation, forced performance, or predictable social rituals, they may withdraw. That withdrawal is often misunderstood. People call them distant, too serious, hard to read, maybe even arrogant. But many of them are not looking down on others. They are just tired of pretending that surface-level connection feels satisfying when it doesn't. They understand many people, but they often feel understood by very few. And that paradox matters because it sits at the center of their emotional life. Highly intelligent people are often more aware of the gap between what is and what could be. They see inefficiency quickly. They see weak logic quickly. They see unrealized potential quickly. That can make them excellent problem solvers. But it can also make them quietly dissatisfied with systems, with work, with relationships, with themselves. Because when you can imagine a better version clearly, reality becomes harder to accept passively. This is one reason perfectionism is so common among highly intelligent people. It is not always vanity. Sometimes it is grief. Grief over the gap between the ideal and the actual. Grief over work that does not match the vision in their head. Grief over a life that feels smaller than what they can mentally conceive. So they delay. They over-prepare. They refine too much. They hesitate to release things into the world. Not because they do not care, but because they care in too much detail. And the same pattern often follows them into work. Highly intelligent people usually do not just want stability. They want stimulation, autonomy, complexity, meaning. They tend to respect competence more than status. They can tolerate difficulty, but they struggle with emptiness. A repetitive environment can drain them. A badly designed system can irritate them. An authority figure with weak reasoning can lose their respect almost instantly. And when they react to that, they are often described as difficult. But many times what they are reacting to is incoherence. They are not resisting structure itself. They are resisting structure that does not make sense. Research on giftedness has often pointed to a similar pattern. High intelligence does not only affect performance, it often affects emotional intensity, social fit, and the feeling of being developmentally out of step with the environment. In other words, intelligence changes more than outcomes. It changes experience, and modern life does not always help. Because this is a world full of noise, fast opinions, endless content, constant stimulation, shallow certainty. For a mind built to go deep, modern culture can feel both fascinating and exhausting. There is always more to think about, and rarely enough room to think well. So over time, many highly intelligent people become paradoxical. They are rational, but emotionally intense. Independent, but quietly longing for rare connection. Capable, but often mentally tired. Sharp in public, but restless in private. They see more, but they also carry more. And maybe that is the part nobody really says out loud. Highly intelligent people are not necessarily better than anyone else. But they are often living inside a different cognitive reality. A reality with more layers, more pattern recognition, more internal dialogue, more awareness of contradiction, more distance between appearance and meaning. And when no one helps them make sense of that reality, intelligence can start to feel less like a gift and more like isolation. They know a lot, but they do not always feel at home in what they know. They can solve difficult problems. But belonging is not a problem you solve once. It is a feeling. And for some of the most intelligent people, that feeling remains strangely elusive. They are like people carrying floodlights in a world built for lamps. They see more than most. But brighter vision often comes with heavier psychological weight. And sometimes the people who understand the world most deeply are still searching for a place inside it.